It was that day when I realized that one of the questions that I've been asking my entire life, why are human beings so messed up, it lied in the Bible. The answer to that question lied in the Bible. Because I had been reading the Bible by this point, I knew what it was saying. So that was definitely also a turning point as well. But then I started looking more in depth into Islam. Like, I can't just follow this faith for no reason, like if I don't know enough about my own faith. So I bust out and I take like 6 Quran translations and I put them all in front of me, and I'm like, all of these translations can't be wrong. They all have to coincide, and if they all coincide, then that means that it is saying what it is saying. It's not corrupt, as the Ummah will tell you that it is. And so I was looking at all these translations and I was reading them over, and they were all saying the same things. And so I started going to sheikhs and imams and other scholars, and I started asking them questions. I mean, I went to MSA after MSA. I went to all these Muslim student associations. I did everything I could and talked to the people that I needed to talk to. I talked to Muslim scholars who had studied Christianity. I talked to Muslim scholars who had converted from Christianity. I didn't just become a Christian without paying heed to Islam. Like, I loved Islam. To this day, like, I have just this attraction to Islam that I cannot explain. And so I decided I need to learn more about my own faith. So when I would ask them questions like, why does it say this? Or, did Muhammad really do this? Or, is the Prophet really who you say he is? Why did he do this in this battle? And so I would ask these questions, and they would answer me, and some of them would say, yeah, I mean, you're right, and so they would just acknowledge this what I had found, and it was just crazy to me that they would acknowledge it. And some of them would say, I think you have a psychological problem for asking these questions. And so I'd be like, okay, dude. And so I started asking Christians as well. I started going to, different Christians that I knew. And my resources were so limited at the time because I couldn't drive. But, I mean, I just read every John Piper book on the internet. I watched a billion debates. I can't even, sit down and go through all the debates that I've seen. And then I just called different churches. If someone gave me a flyer to a church, I went on the church and I called them and said, hey, I'm thinking about Christianity. Can you come and explain some things to me? Or I would, go online and read certain books. I read lots of Lee Strobel's books. I'm sure a lot of you guys have. I read lots of those books. But there was a point where I was like, wow, if there really is a God in this world, then it can't just lie between Islam and Christianity. Like, he could be in any of the world's greatest religions. So then I was like, okay, I need to break down every religion out there to see, who God is. And so I go out, and I swear this is all the Holy Spirit, because I don't just read a whole bunch of books for fun. That's not me. But I was just going through book after book, and I was just going through just resources. And if I had a question on things, if I had a question on hell, I wouldn't just ask a random person, say, hey, do you know why God sends these people to hell? I would contact a professor at a Christian school who taught on hell and who wrote about hell in books and stuff. I would contact him and talk to him and email him and call him and say, can you answer this question for me? So I went to the right people who, if I had a question on the resurrection of Jesus, I would go to a scholar who had studied on the resurrection of Jesus. I would make sure that my resources were the right resources that could answer my questions. That is very vital. And if you're going to go on a search for God, you do need to take heed to that. And so then I started breaking down every religion. I went to atheists, and I spoke to atheists and every belief system, and I went to a Buddhist temple, and it was just and ultimately all of that searching and all of that reading on different religions led me back in the same position. I was holding my Quran and I was looking at my Bible in the same confused look that I did in the beginning. And so I had the same questions in my head, and I was like, okay, it lies between these two. It just does. And it's not because Islam had somehow, seemed better than the other belief systems or seemed more consistent than Buddhism or, say, Hinduism. At a logical standpoint or historical standpoint, Islam isn't as consistent as I would like it to be. But it was still there because I have an attachment to it. My whole family's Muslim. All all my, distant relatives are Muslim. The country that I come from, like, that is a 99.9% Muslim country. That is why my Quran was still there, and that is why I still was confused about the Bible, because by this point, it wasn't a matter of questions, or it wasn't a matter of, is the Bible really true, is the Bible really consistent, is the resurrection of Jesus really reliable, is Jesus who he said he was, were these scholars just making things up, is Paul who Paul was in the Bible in the New Testament, and it wasn't questions on hell or anything anymore. It was just, I was sitting there and I was like, I can't believe in this. I mean, I can't do this, because I was not born into a Christian family. I was meant to be a Muslim. I was born into a Muslim family. I was meant to follow Allah. I love Ummah. I love Salat. Like, I loved everything about Islam. It was just so, it gave me a balance between being an Afghani and being an American. Being Muslim was my balance. I loved Islam. Even to this day, I have such an attraction to it, and I have to remind myself that it is false and not true. And so I was looking at my Bible, and I was just, by this point, I was like, I can't believe in you. Like, God, sorry. Like, I can't do this, because my parents are going to kill me. Like, my parents, what are they going to do? Like, I'm going to get beat for it. I'm going to get persecuted. I'm never going to get to marry a Muslim guy. And all these thoughts went through my head. And so Ramadan came around, and I was just like, I'm going to put the Bible aside. Like, I'm just going to devote myself to Allah this month. I'm just going to do what I need to do. Like, it was kind of almost like a last-ditch attempt, because I so desperately wanted to be Muslim. I so desperately wanted to believe in something that was a lie, because it gave me everything that I was set up for in life, everything that my parents wanted. It would make my, parents happy. It would make my brothers happy. And so I just tried to devote myself to Allah. I prayed way more than 5 times a day. I did every Fajr Salat and every Sunnah Salat. Like, I did every Fajr, Asr, Maghrib, Aisha. I did, the Fard ones and the Sunnah ones. I did everything that I can so that I could have a relationship with Allah. I was learning how to recite the Quran in Arabic. I was reading like Surah An-Nas and all these different things, and I was going to Muslim parties, and I was going to Muslim classes. I would go in Belief in Allah classes every Sunday night. I did everything that I could. I surrounded myself by the Muslim Ummah, and I even prayed at school. Like, I would go and do wudu in the girls' bathroom, and girls would be like, what are you doing, And I'd be like, this is just kind of what you do when you're Muslim. And so I would explain to them these things, and I would even pray Salat. Like, when my teacher was teaching, I would go in the back room and I would pray Salat. So I just tried so hard, to learn as much as I could about Islam. And I tried so hard to make it fit into my mindset, and to just say, no, this is the truth. But Eid al-Fitr came around, so everyone knows it's like the biggest Muslim holiday. It's one of the biggest. And we were celebrating the end of Ramadan, and we were at my aunt's house, and everyone was just praising me like, oh, Negeen, you did so well. We're so proud of you. We're so excited that you did so well, and you're praying all these things. We're so excited. You're becoming just this great Muslimah, this great Muslim woman. And I looked at them, and I'm like, oh, thank you, And so I was sitting there, and by this point, the spiritual battle was insane. It was insane, to the point where I would wake up in the middle of the night and ask myself, how come I don't know who God is? How come I don't have a truth yet? I've studied so hard. I've talked to so many people. I've snuck out to churches, and I went to mosques, and I just did Jummah prayer after Jummah prayer. And I was like, why don't I know this yet? I talked to atheists, I talked to Buddhists, I talked to Hindus. I went and picked up every book that I can on all these religions, and I still don't have an answer.